Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the podcast. And today I'm going to do my review of AEW's Dynamite. First off, man, number one, this was a great show last night, and I have a lot of stuff to go over tonight. About this show, we have Will Ospreay showing up officially in AEW last night as a full contracted employee. We're going to go over that and what he said last night. We also are going to talk about Adam Page and what's been going on with Adam Page here as of late. We also have news of a possible another pay-per-view added to the pay-per-view calendar for AEW, which I will get into more details about that as well. And Sting. This was Sting's final Dynamite, and we're going to go over all this stuff right here on the podcast today. Let's start off with Adam Page, man. Adam Page, he has a segment last night. Page walks down to the ring with a crutch. Page talks about AEW and what it meant to him and his friends by starting AEW. He says he wants to be able to he won't be able to compete on Sunday due to his hurt leg, quote unquote. Swerve comes down to the ring. Swerve says that him and Page have gone to war, which 100% factual. Have great matches between Swerve and Page. Swerve then also says that it is his destiny on Sunday to become the new AEW World Champion. Samoa Joe, he's here. He's standing on the stage. Joe mocks Page and Swerve, but at the same time also respects both Page and Swerve. He says that he's going to starve them out. You know, Page wants to see, what Page and Swerve are going to do at Revolution. Swerve then grabs a microphone and says that he will become the new champion. Swerve then mocks Joe. Page then hits Swerve with the crutch, which leaves Swerve in the middle of the ring. And Page says that he is going to come after the AEW World Champion, and obviously he is not injured, and the triple threat match is still on between Page, Swerve, and Samoa Joe. A couple of things I want to say about this, man. Number one, I know a lot of people were talking about this with Page. Now, there was some rumors out there that Page might not be showing up at Revolution, also due to some family issues that were going on in his family, and there might have been a possible reason for, Page not being at Revolution. So it does look like that match is going to continue, going to happen at Revolution, which is awesome. It's going to be a fantastic match. But I'm kind of split 50-50 here, man, with this matchup here at Revolution. Because my thing is this. Obviously, like I told you guys earlier in the podcast, that there is rumors of another pay-per-view coming to the pay-per-view calendar of AEW, which I will touch bases on here towards the end of the podcast. But at the end of the day, I think with what's going on with this storyline here between Page, Swerve, and Joe, I don't want Joe to be a transitional champion. I don't want Joe just to win the belt and then his, first big title defense, he loses the belt. But on the flip side of that coin, man, and I've said this for many months now, I have a lot of praise for Swerve. And I think Swerve, the body of work that Swerve has put in and the matches that he's had, man, Swerve deserves to be world champion. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the crowd's behind Swerve. He has a lot of momentum right now. And even that little bit of a promo that he cut last night about, what he went through up to, with his career. And obviously he was talking about his time when he was in WWE from NXT and getting called up to the WWE main roster. Page has been, Swerve has been hungry, man. Swerve wants an opportunity. He wants to showcase, his talent, but he also wants to showcase what he can do as a world champion. And I'm all for that. I mean, I think Swerve would be a great world champion, but the other, dynamic of this whole segment was Adam Page. A lot of people, at first you want to see Adam Page as the babyface, with him attacking Swerve last night when Swerve turned his back on Page and, Page hit him with that crutch. Now it's starting to look like Swerve might be this babyface and Page might be this heel, especially leading up to this match of Revolution. But again, it's like, do you see Swerve walking out of Revolution as world champion, or do you see Samoa Joe retain this belt? Because the other wild card in this, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about, is MJF. Once MJF comes back from injury, where are you going to slot in MJF? Are you going to have him go up against Joe if Joe somehow retains the belt at Revolution because all the stuff that Joe had did to MJF? Plus, MJF does deserve a rematch for that AEW World Championship. Again, does Joe retain? And then Joe does another title defense against Swerve at the next pay-per-view. So there's a lot of things that are up in the air right now when it pertains to this AEW World Championship. So I'm definitely excited for this triple threat match at Revolution for the AEW World Championship, man. It's going to be definitely a match to see for sure. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of Dynamite last night. It is a six-man tag team matchup. It is Eddie Kingston teaming up with FTR versus the Blackpool Combat Club, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Bryan Danielson. I thought it was a really good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between both teams with Wheeler and Moxley both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Eddie Kingston and FTR were trying to keep the pace of the match. Dax Harwood and Claudio both exchange. Moxley then applies a figure four on Dax in the middle of the ring, but the hold is broken. Kingston and Danielson then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Kingston hitting an exploding suplex in the middle of the ring. Claudio then hits a giant swing on Kingston. Moxley hits a pile driver on Kingston as well. FTR then get involved in the match, lands a bulldog on Danielson for a near fall. FTR then hit a shatter machine on Claudio in the middle of the ring. Danielson then hits a running knee on Kingston. And then Danielson applies a triangle choke on Eddie Kingston. And the referee sounds for the bell, and your winners of the match are the Blackpool Combat Club. A couple of things I want to say about this, man. Number one, we're gonna get a matchup at Revolution between FTR and Moxley and Claudio, which I told you guys there was no way in hell that they're not going to book Moxley and Claudio or FTR in this pay-per-view. There's no way. There was no way that was happening. So the best way that they can put both these teams on Revolution is to have a tag team matchup. Bryan Danielson also has a match at Revolution against Eddie Kingston for the Continental Classic. So I'm all for that. I think it's going to be a great match. There's a lot of history there between Kingston and Bryan Danielson as of late. I believe it was on Collision where Danielson went up against Akiyama, and that was a big mentor to Eddie Kingston. And then obviously Danielson hit the low blow on Akiyama on Collision, which got this matchup to happen here on Dynamite with the six-man tag team matchup. So there's a lot of history there between Danielson and Eddie Kingston, and that there's going to be a match at Revolution for the Continental Championship. But like I said, man, there was no way in hell that you were not going to book Moxley or Claudio or FTR and not book them on Revolution. There was no way that wasn't going to happen. So definitely looking forward to that tag team matchup, and definitely looking forward to Bryan Danielson versus Eddie Kingston for the Continental Championship. Moving on from that, we have Will Ospreay. Ospreay finally shows up on Dynamite since he has signed his contract with AEW, and he's officially a member of AEW's roster. He came out to a great ovation. The crowd was insane for Ospreay. Ospreay comes down to the ring. He gives a hug to Tony Schiavone. Ospreay says that his obligations that he had with New Japan Pro Wrestling are no longer there. He is done with the stuff with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he's fulfilled his contract duties with New Japan. Ospreay also says that he is here for full-time work. So looks like we're going to see Ospreay a lot more on AEW television, which I'm all for that. Ospreay talks about matches that he's previously had in AEW, the match he had at All In with Chris Jericho, which was a fantastic match, and other matches that he had working with the Don Callis family. Speaking of Don Callis family, Don Callis, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Takeshita come down to the ring. Takeshita and Ospreay get face-to-face. They talk about their match at Revolution, which, by the way, if you guys do watch Revolution this weekend on Sunday, watch out for that match. Ospreay versus Takeshita is going to be a sleeper match and possible candidate for match of the year. I'm just letting y'all know that now, in my opinion. Don't sleep on that match, man. It's going to be a fantastic match. But Don Callis says it's great to have a family reunion after Takeshita and Ospreay get face-to-face. They kind of, have some banter back and forth between Ospreay and Takeshita, man, which pretty much hypes up the match at Revolution. But all in all, man, I'm excited for this match. I think this is going to be a sleeper match, like I told you guys. It's definitely a match. If you do watch the pay-per-view, which I hope you guys do, it's a sleeper match, man. Don't sleep on this match. This match is going to be fantastic, and like I said, possibly candidate for match of the year of 2024. So I'm all for this match. It is Ospreay's pretty much pay-per-view debut since he has signed a contract with AEW, so I'm all for that as well. So, again, man, it's going to be a must-see matchup this Sunday at Revolution. Now, moving on from that, we have an open challenge match. It is Orange Cassidy defending the International Championship against Nick Wayne. Number one, I thought it was a good match. You had Christian Cage ringside, Kill Switch as well. Nick Wayne's mom was also ringside during this match. It was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Cassidy and Nick Wayne. Wayne hits a Hurricane Rana on Orange Cassidy in the middle of the ring. Wayne then hits a moonsault to the outside. Cage then gets involved with the referee being distracted by attacking Orange Cassidy. The referee then throws out Cage and the rest of the Patriarch family, if you will. Orange then hits a beach break on Nick Wayne for a near fall. Undisputed Kingdom are here. Matt Taven and Mike Bennett trying to cause a distraction on Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy then hits an orange punch on Nick Wayne, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and still international champion is Orange Cassidy. After the match, Roderick Strong gets involved by attacking Orange Cassidy after the match. Trent Beretta and Rocky Romero come out to the ring to save Orange Cassidy as well. So, A couple things I want to say about this, man, quickly. Number one, was I a big fan of this matchup? No, I was not. I was not a big fan of this match. I don't know what Nick Wayne has done to earn a title shot. And again, I'm going to reiterate this one last time. The ranking system is flawed in AEW. It's not needed. Just stop it. I understand that AEW is trying to have this more sports presentation. I get that. But if you're throwing out open challenges, then why the hell are we even having a ranking system to begin with? And I'm not trying to disrespect Nick Wayne, but at the same time, too, what have you done as of late to even give yourself an opportunity at a title shot? Nothing. I mean, nothing at all. So, I mean, the ranking system in AEW is flawed. I don't know why Tony Khan wants to use this ranking system. It's flawed. It does not work. And this is a prime example of that. Why is Orange Cassidy having an open challenge? And we have Nick Wayne answering that challenge to challenge Orange Cassidy for the International Championship. It just doesn't make sense. And like I said, the ranking system, it's flawed. It's not needed, and it's not necessary for AEW. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Sky Blue versus Chris Statlander. I thought this was a good match. It was a great showing by Sky Blue. Back and forth matchup between Blue and Statlander, with Statlander keeping the pace of the match. Julia Hart is ringside. She gets involved in the match by attacking Chris Statlander with the referee being distracted, which allows Sky Blue to hit her signature Code Blue on Statlander in the middle of the ring. Pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match is Sky Blue. Hats off to Sky Blue for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Chris Jericho versus Atlantis Jr. Now, a lot of people don't know who Atlantis Jr. is, and I don't really know who Atlantis Jr. is either. No disrespect. But they have a little bit of a video package earlier that night about this matchup, and supposedly Jericho obviously had matches over in Mexico, specifically CMLL, in Jericho's early days in his professional wrestling career, and he used to be tag team partners with Atlantis Jr.'s father, Atlantis. So there was a little bit of history there between Atlantis and Jericho also mentioned that Atlantis was a big mentor to him, especially in his time when he wrestled over in Mexico. So that's how we got this matchup tonight. For what it's worth, it was a decent match. It was a good showing by Atlantis Jr. Jericho came out as the Lionheart Jericho, especially paying homage to his early days in CMLL when he was the Lionheart Chris Jericho, which I thought was cool. It was a back-and-forth matchup. Atlantis was keeping the pace. Jericho then applies the walls of Jericho on Atlantis, but the hold is broken. Jericho and Atlantis then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Atlantis hitting a power slam on Chris Jericho. Jericho gets up, hits a hurricanrana off the top rope on Atlantis. Jericho then applies the walls of Jericho, and then Atlantis Sr. throws in the towel. The match stops, and your winner of the match is Chris Jericho. Hats off to Jericho for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Young Bucks segment to close out the show last night for Dynamite. Throughout the entire day, and I want to preference this too, throughout the entire day, or throughout Dynamite, I would say, Young Bucks were, looking for Sting. They were walking around with baseball bats. They were looking for Sting, looking for Darby. Throughout the entire day, they went backstage and they found Sting's locker room, his dressing room. So they went back there with the baseball bats, and when they got back there was no Sting in the locker room, but hanging from the ceiling were a bunch of bats that were hanging from the ceiling in Sting's locker room, even though there was no Sting. So the end of the night, towards the end of the show, we get the Young Bucks coming down to the ring. Nick Jackson addresses some fans that were wearing Sting masks, obviously showing how much respect Sting has. But they had a bunch of fans that were wearing Sting's mask, and one of those fans ended up being Darby Allin. Darby Allin jumped the barricade to attack the Young Bucks. Young Bucks then ended up getting Darby Allin in a ring and attacking Darby Allin. Young Bucks then hit an EVP trigger on Darby. Ric Flair's music hits. He comes down to the ring, which I initially thought that Flair was going to be a part of, Matt and Nick Jackson's entourage, if you will, or be a part of that team with the Young Bucks. And I was wrong. And I will admit that I was wrong. Flair comes down to the ring. He attacks the Young Bucks, but Nick hits a low blow on Rick. And everybody's trying to wonder where the hell is Sting at. Everybody's chanting Sting. We want Sting. Where's Sting? So Matt and Nick Jackson walk up the ramp because Sting's music hits. They're thinking he's coming to the entrance ramp, but instead of the entrance ramp, Sting actually comes down from the rafters, which was absolutely awesome. It was a great moment. We haven't seen Sting do that since WCW, in my opinion. So it was great to see Sting come down from the rafters one last time. and then Sting standing in the middle of the ring, and he kind of gets even with the Young Bucks. So I was all for this, man. This was a great segment from the Young Bucks and Sting. This was Sting, obviously Sting's last Dynamite. So it was awesome, man. I thought it was a decent show. I thought it was a really good show last night. I'm not gonna say the best Dynamite, but it was a really good show in my honest opinion. With a lot of news and rumors and stuff even coming out of last night's show as well, which I also want to get into in a minute. But as far as Dynamite last night, man, it was a solid show from top to bottom. Like I said, you had the Young Bucks pretty much looking for Sting throughout the entire night, and then finally having Sting drop down from the rafters. It was absolutely a great moment, awesome moment. And I think at Revolution, man, I think you're going to see a lot of legends. I think, or at least hope so. For Sting's final match. I know there was rumors and speculation possibly of Lex Luger possibly showing up at Revolution, which would be absolutely awesome. Lex is a good friend of Sting and vice versa. They were former tag team champions, good friends. So it'd be great to see Lex Luger at Revolution. You might see Arn Anderson as well. Flair, obviously. And hopefully some other legends that, played a part into Sting's career as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to that at Revolution. But it was a great moment for Sting last night, especially with him coming down from the rafters. And honestly, for what it's worth, other stuff that happened on Dynamite too, man. We had Will Ospreay showing up, making his mission statement towards the match that he's going to have with Takeshita, which I told you guys is going to be a sleeper match. Adam Page's segment. Initially you thought, oh man, he might be injured, his ankle might be done, but he fooled everybody. Kind of turned heel, if you will, on Swerve and hit Swerve with that crutch, which had Swerve pretty much laid out in the middle of the ring. So again, just hyping up that matchup, that triple threat match between Joe, Page, and Swerve. Definitely looking forward to that. We had Atlantis Jr. versus Jericho. A little history there between Jericho and Atlantis. So it was a solid night. Not the greatest Dynamite, but it damn sure was not the worst. Other things I want to get into, man, and I was talking about this earlier before the podcast even kind of really took off today, was a lot of the news and stuff and some of the stuff that I collected about AEW that I wanted to talk about with you guys. The biggest one that I have here that I wanted to briefly talk about was AEW's next possible pay-per-view. Now, if you guys don't know, it was speculated for a little bit of time now that AEW was going to have, a 12 pay-per-view format, possibly starting for 2024. And to me, I think that's kind of where AEW is going to be going. I got news and rumors yesterday, and what I got is that AEW is possibly going to add another pay-per-view called Dynasty, which will take place this year in April. So about 2 months from now, we might have a new pay-per-view known as Dynasty, which to me, it's a great name. I was a little shocked that, this happened just abruptly, to be honest with you. But Dynasty might be the new pay-per-view that's going to be on the pay-per-view calendar for AEW, and that possibly will take place, the pay-per-view will take place sometime in April. Now, this might be also a good time to bring in a guy like MJF back from injury to be a part of this pay-per-view as well, being that it is in April. We might be seeing MJF possibly at this pay-per-view. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, especially pertaining to this pay-per-view, is AEW's streaming deal. Now, there's nothing been, said about this streaming deal, but I will say this. If Dynasty is going to be a pay-per-view in April, and let's just look at the calendar as a whole from, the beginning of January all the way until, Christmas. So let's look at the pay-per-view schedule that AEW has as of right now. January, they don't have anything. February usually used to be Revolution. Now it's March 3rd. So I'm not going to say that I'm just looking at it as of right now. There's no pay-per-views January, February as of right now. But we have Revolution in March. Okay, March 3rd, this Sunday, we have Revolution. Then, in April, we have the possibility of another pay-per-view known as Dynasty, which might be the new pay-per-view for AEW. So we have March Revolution, April Dynasty, and then we have June. Now, June is going to be possibly Forbidden Door. So you have Forbidden Door in June. July, I don't think there's anything in July, if I'm not mistaken. But August and September, you have All In and All Out. So my thing is, and this pertains to the streaming deal, Tony Khan needs to do something for the streaming deal, man, because these pay-per-views are like $50 a pop, and you're doing them back to back to back to back to back. And it's not just completely about the money and what the pay-per-views are, but Tony Khan has the catalog up to this point to get a streaming deal and put some of those older pay-per-views on a streaming platform so the fans can watch them, and also fans can subscribe to said streaming services and watch upcoming pay-per-views, kind of like what Peacock does for WWE. AEW and Tony Khan need to somehow solidify a streaming deal here relatively soon, in my honest opinion, because if they are going to go to a 12 pay-per-view a year format, then you got to have something. You cannot expect people to pay $50 a pop every single month for these pay-per-views. It's insane. So, like, he needs to entertain the idea, and the wheels need to be turning for a possible streaming deal for AEW to have their content and their pay-per-views on a streaming deal. I just think it works for both parties. It works for, obviously, whatever, streaming deal they end up signing with, whether, be HBO Max, which will be great. I know AEW has done some work with HBO Max, especially with sponsors and stuff like that for Dynamite and stuff like that. So, if that's the route they decide to go, great. It gets more subscribers, obviously, to HBO Max, which is a huge plus for them. And for the consumer, the person that watches AEW, it's, saves some money in your pocket for these pay-per-views when you're not forking out $50 every month for those pay-per-views, where you might not want to spend $50 for the pay-per-view because the pay-per-view might not be that good or that well. So, again, it's a win-win business strategy, in my honest opinion, for both AEW and whatever streaming deal that, decides to bring in AEW. It's a win-win for both. But that's some of the news I have, man. The biggest one, like I said earlier, is the new pay-per-view possibly known as Dynasty, which will take place sometime possibly in April of this year. So, again, it does look like Tony Khan and AEW want to go into a full 12-month pay-per-view schedule. And some of that might take place this year. So, again, insane. I also heard speculations and rumors about Grand Slam possibly not being in New York. And I also heard rumors of speculation that Grand Slam might also be another pay-per-view for AEW. So again, a lot of stuff is going on right now with AEW behind the scenes, and they're doing a lot of big business right now. Obviously, they brought in Jennifer Pepperman to be a part of the creative team, which I talked about last week. I also think that has a lot to do with Mercedes Moné. Now, if you guys also watched Dynamite last night, I thought this was funny. I didn't really look too much into it until last night. It kind of caught my eye last night when I was watching Dynamite. And then if you look at the graphic below, when they introduced like new shows coming into said town, like whether it be like Duluth, Georgia, or Savannah, Georgia, or New York, or whatever, it says Dynamite's coming to be here on this date, yada, yada, yada. So they announced, I think it was Excalibur that announced, was talking about the show that's happening on the 13th at the TD Garden, a big business. But if you look at it, when it says Boston, it's BO $TON. To me, it was 100% confirmation that Mercedes Moné is going to be at this show on the 13th at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, her hometown. I looked at it, I was like, holy, wow. Like, obviously they're not going to say who it is, but the best way they can do it and beat around the bush is do what they did with that graphic last night for big business that's taking place in the TD Garden on March 13th. So I definitely think that Mercedes is definitely showing up in AEW on the 13th of March at the TD Garden. 100. I'm like 95% sure. The other big name, obviously, too, is Okada. Is Okada coming over to AEW? I know Okada, he made a statement, I think it was a couple days ago, that he has no intentions at all going back to New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. Is he going over to WWE or is he going over to AEW? I think if Okada doesn't want to go back to New Japan at this point, anything's going to happen. But me personally, I'd rather see Okada go over to AEW. I think it just works for Okada, to be honest with you. I mean, especially with, if Okada has to move his family from Japan and be in the States, he might not be able to, he might have to do that if he goes to WWE, where he might not have to do that in AEW and uproot his entire family. It was the same thing with Ospreay. I mean, TNA at the time when Scott D'Amore was running it, being a part of TNA, I should say, they threw 7 figures supposedly at Will Ospreay, but Ospreay said no. So that could have been because he didn't want to uproot his family from England to the States. This might be the same kind of situation with Okada, where Okada doesn't want to uproot his family and come over to the States and so on and so forth, or wherever he does live. He might not want to uproot that. So who knows? And I mean, to me, like I said, the best thing for Okada, in my opinion, would be going over to AEW, because AEW has a more free format of what they can do. I mean, their superstars can also go on the indies and wrestle. I mean, you look at, what was it, Rev Pro? I mean, you had Ospreay in a match that was a 6-star match, and you had Orange Cassidy defending the International Championship as well on that same show at Rev Pro. So a lot of the superstars have a lot more freedom to go over to different promotions and wrestle, even though they're still a contracted wrestler with AEW. So I think it's a win-win for talent that wrestles with AEW. That the time that they have off, they can go wrestle somewhere else and make their money for another promotion, whether it be Rev Pro or Progress Wrestling or whatever. They can make their money. So I think Okada coming in possibly to AEW, he could possibly show up on the 13th in March, and kind of do a big surprise, a double debut, if you will. They did the same thing before with Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson. They debuted both those guys on Dynamite or in AEW the same night. So I would not be surprised if they debut Mercedes and Okada, and Tony Khan's going to have a big laugh about it when it's slap in the face, if you will, to WWE. Because I know Triple H was trying to bring in Mercedes into WWE as well as Okada. So again, man, it was a solid night last night. Not the best AEW Dynamite, but it damn sure was not the worst. Definitely newsworthy. It was great to see Sting, like I said, come down from the rafters. Obviously we were talking about AEW bringing in a new pay-per-view known as Dynasty, which might take place in April, and that AEW needs to get on board with a possible streaming deal here for the near future for AEW, especially when it pertains to the pay-per-view schedule that AEW wants to have. We talked about Ospreay showing up last night. He had a great segment as well, talking about, he's a full-time worker now for AEW, and that this match with Takeshita is going to be an absolute banger match. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. And we also had Adam Page, kind of playing mind games with Swerve and attack Swerve with a crutch. And it looks like Page is going to be pretty much becoming a heel, especially when it pertains to his triple threat matchup with Page, Swerve, and Joe at Revolution for the AEW World Championship. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.